Growing up, I remember watching the Pokemon anime series, and in that first episode, Ash Ketchum managed to really get the wrath of one Spearow alone, who then, of course, called all his brothers and sisters, and everything just sort of evolved from there. Haha. But basically, Spearow seemed to be this vengeful, angry, powerful little beast. And it always made me think that maybe Spearow was a lot stronger and a lot cooler of a Pokemon than maybe I initially thought. That being said, because Ash also then had a Pidgeotto and then of course a Pidgeot, I never used Spearow. I never used Fearow. So I never really had an opportunity to take a look at this Pokemon until today. So welcome to yet another solo Pokemon challenge in Pokemon Yellow. Today looking at the normal flying type Spearow. It's the pre-evolution to Fearow, which obviously is also a Pokemon that they make you seem to think is a pretty strong Pokemon, at least within the show. And I only have ever had to deal with it a couple of times in this game. It's not a frequently used Pokemon within even the realm of Pokemon. So I am looking forward to seeing what Spearow can do today to help separate itself from Pidgey, the other early stage pre-evolution normal flying bird Pokemon. The thing is that looking at, honestly, everything that it has going on, Spearow doesn't have a lot, I think, going for it, at least in terms of the separation between its counterpart of Pidgey. I think there's going to be two main things that are going to be something that we can kind of take a look at here. The first of which is a move that it learns at level 22 called Mirror Move. Mirror Move is honestly exactly what it sounds like, right? It mirrors the move of the Pokemon that you're going against, the move that they just used. You mirror it back. The reason why this is not really helpful is because oftentimes those moves are going to be very ineffective against themselves, right? A water versus a water isn't going to help you with anything. So Mirror Move doesn't really, I think, add any kind of benefit to Spearow at the end of the day. And so I think that move is going to be pretty pointless. We're not going to see it be used at any point here today. I just think it's too much of a gamble at any point. Not helpful whatsoever. Now, it also learns Agility, which is going to be a setup move that we will be using. Of course, the setup moves are important in this generation, especially because of the badge boosts, which I'll come back to in a second because I want to talk about the main move that we are going to be using to separate ourselves, and the thing that's going to take us through most of this run, if I'm honest. And that move is a move called Drill Peck. That's the move that we learn at level 29. Drill Peck has a base stat of 80 for the power, but of course, since we are normal flying, we're going to get a boost to that, so it's going to be over 80 damage unless the Pokemon resists it. So Drill Peck is honestly a very powerful move with 100% accuracy. The only way to miss it is if we get an accuracy debuff or the extremely rare Gen 1 miss. A Gen 1 miss, of course, is when 1 out of 256 times that you use a move that is 100% accurate, it will still miss. It only happens in Gen 1 and in Pokemon Stadium 1, which means it's not really going to be something that we need to worry about too much today. But we are worrying about a few things. So what we've already done here is we've done a lot of training within Viridian Forest. We've gotten up to level 11, we're close to level 12, which does mean that I think that we are ready to take on the second rival battle. This is the kind of battle that with a stronger Pokemon, we probably could just skip and get a different type of team for the rival, but it's important, I think, to all of the bird Pokemon that we end up fighting and winning against the rival in the lab and here in this optional match, which we just did. Honestly, it goes by so quickly sometimes while trying to explain this, but this is not a part of the game that I think is too hard yet, so I don't think that we need to narrate every single moment of those battles. But the reason that we want to go against the rival both times and win both times, of course, is because we do, weirdly enough, want the Jolteon team. I know that a lot of people will say, but that's the electric type. Yes, of course, but Jolteon is a lot less scary, in my opinion, than Magneton, and maybe Vaporeon would be an easier team to go up against, because then you do have Magneton, but you don't have the Cloyster, and I do think that Cloyster is a major problem. But at the end of the day, I think I'd rather take Cloyster and Jolteon than Vaporeon and Magneton. I don't know why, that's just sort of where my brain is. Plus, honestly, the extra experience that we get in those two battles is very beneficial to getting at least somewhat a decent time for Spearow. As I say every week, I'm not trying to speedrun these, I'm just trying to do my best possible time, and maybe someday I will come back and revisit some of these, but for now, this is just sort of, we're looking at what is possible, what's doable, and just revisiting one of my favorite games of all time, which is Pokemon Yellow. So for Spearow, we are going to have to do a lot of leveling up here. We do desperately need to get to Fury Attack in order to take on Brock. What I'm doing here is I am spending all of my money because I don't want it to really go to waste. The only way to kind of level up quickly here is to force a blackout training. And so what we're going to do is we're going to spend all of our money, just get a few items, and even if they're pointless, even if I never use them, at the very least, I don't just randomly lose my money. I can always sell it back for at least some of it, right? But we're going to go up against the junior trainer here in his gym a few times in order to get Spearow to level up to 15, because passing out over and over again and defeating his Diglett will give us more experience points than we could ever get from just running around Viridian Forest for a long time. So we will showcase the first blackout here, and then we will cut to the final time in which we defeat him. And here you go. We've skipped about a level and a half. We are almost at level 15. I am very confident that we will get to level 15 in this battle, and of course I'm correct. We just barely miss it with the Diglett, but we do get there with defeating the Sandshrew, which means that we are now free to move on to Brock. Now, as a rock-type trainer, Brock should be obviously very concerning for a bird-type Pokemon, but because he is the first gym leader and his Pokemon are so low level, there are no rock moves in which Geodude or Onix can really do a lot of damage to Spearow. It's all going to be normal-type attacks. The big thing here, of course, being, though, that they are resistant to every possible move that I can use here. So we're going to have to kind of stall out the Onix as much as possible. We are getting a couple benefits here. The first of which is that when he uses Bide, he is absorbing any damage that we can toss out, which means that we can use things like Growl or Leer to just change his stats and not add anything onto his Bite attack, which then means, of course, there's nothing to use, so he misses, which is a few free turns for us every time, and it means that he can't do any extra damage to us. Bind will do some damage to us, and that could be dangerous, but for now, it's not too big of a deal. Fury Attack is great because if I used Fury Attack during Bide, it would only count the first hit, all the other hits would be free, but today we didn't even need that. We are able to take him out with some carefully planned out other moves and then using Fury Attack just to sort of chip away and eventually polish the rock down to a victory. Now, after that gym, we make our way to Mount Moon, fighting basically every trainer. The only one that I skip is the one that I would have to backtrack in order to defeat, but we get every possible fight in, and we're going to continue that on in Mount Moon, of course, because looking at Pidgey's run, I do recognize that Pidgey had a lot of resets. It took Pidgey, honestly, way more time than I think it should have, purely because it got stalled so heavily at the end of the run. So to try to avoid some of that same pitfall with Spearow, who I actually don't think will do too much better, I also think that I'm going to have to level up as much as possible. It's just the only way that I really see Spearow making any kind of headway against some of the harder Pokemon or the harder trainers. I know it's going to sound ludicrous, but again, you want to look at someone like Lieutenant Surge. Even though he's not a good trainer, even though he's an awful gym leader in this generation and only has Raichu, if Raichu hits me with Thunderbolt even once, I don't think I live that. Or maybe I do if I'm a high enough level, but again, that just means that I'm going to have to level up as much as possible between here and there. And the same thing for going up against a Pokemon that Lorelei has. Really, any of them. But specifically, Pokemon like Dugong, Lapras, Jinx, Cloyster. Honestly, the Slowbro is pretty dangerous, but the Slowbro might be the only thing that doesn't pose a real major threat to Spearow. And on the opposite side of that statement, not posing a real threat to Spearow is Team Rocket. And as they blast off again, we finally make it to Cerulean City, where we are going to have a couple really hard battles up ahead with both our rival and, of course, with Misty. Misty's Starmie is pretty dang tough, especially for someone like Spearow, where there's not really anything that we can do to hit it very hard. So Spearow's going to have a little bit of a time here. I could foresee a couple resets, if I'm honest. I don't think we're going to need to do any kind of blackout training. I think that we can just sort of get through it. I think we just maybe need the best possible outcome. I think the RNG needs to be on our side in terms of critical hits, or perhaps in terms of something like when she uses X Defend and Harden versus using a move like Tackle or Water Gun, and of course the much more deadly Bubble Beam. Bubble Beam can be absolutely devastating to honestly most Pokemon in this game. So therefore, I will fight the two trainers in her gym just to get a little bit of extra experience, and then I'm going to go fight my rival at the Nugget Bridge. I think that we have enough power in our attacks at this point to get through. Considering Sandshrew does not get any sand attacks off, we are looking pretty good. So Eevee is the only thing standing between us and victory. It also does not get a sand attack off, and therefore we do not miss a single hit. After that, we then make our way up Nugget Bridge, and then of course all of the trainers on Route 25, including this hiker who only has an Onyx. I decided that I wanted as much experience as possible, which I do think is still needed, but at the same time, again, we are showcasing that this Onyx is harder than Brock's, I would say, and Spearow barely makes it through. So we still have a lot of struggles ahead for this little bird. After we get through all of that, we make our way back to Cerulean in order to take on Misty finally. And even though we make it through the Staryu pretty quickly, Starmie hits so hard with Bubble Beam. We were talking about this earlier, but Bubble Beam is a real problem. Bubble Beam hits very hard and also frequently gets critical hits because of Starmie's power, honestly. So going back into it, we're going to try this just again. I'm not going to try and do any more training. I think we can just get a better RNG situation here. So we get back into the fight. Staryu goes down quickly. And so far, because we're not seeing Bubble Beam being used, things are looking good until, yeah, the Bubble Beam, as always. Yeah, Bubble Beam gets us. All right, well, we go one more time. I still believe in the power of this little bird, and despite knowing that he's going to need all the training he can get throughout the entire run, I don't think that we need to try and level up too much more in order to go against Starmie. Again, it's about getting the right RNG and using the right moves at the right time. This time, Fury Attack once again carries us through a gym battle, but that is going to be one of the last times that that move is helpful. We then make our way down to Vermilion City and get all the way through every trainer in SS Anne, and we make our way finally to the final battle of this ship, which is going against our rival. Their Spearow is not that strong, so we defeat it. We make our way through Rattata. Sandshrew is kind of a danger because of Sand Attack, but because we go first, we take it down. And Drill Peck being a move that we have finally learned, by the way, throughout this trip, that's a big key factor of that victory. We cut through him so quickly. And therefore, we can make our way onto the next big challenge. And I know what the people are going to say. They're going to say, Colin, why would you make this be the next big challenge? Why would you go against Surge at this point in the game? Surely because he's not necessary to beat right now. You could just go do some more fights and some more gym battles and all that other stuff and then come back. Oh, yep. And that's probably the main reason why people would say that, because he uses Thunderbolt once and, yep, Spearow's a little cooked. But it's fine. I'm pretty sure that we won't have a lot of resets here. I think that because he's not a good gym leader, he's not a good trainer in general, I think that we can make it through. Okay, well, Okay, I still believe this. I know that it doesn't look good. I know that those first 2 battles against him are a little rough, but surely we can make it through on this one. I think that we just need to prove that he's kind of a fraud, that he doesn't make good moves, he doesn't make good attempts. There we go. That's exactly what I'm talking about. He doesn't even use his super effective move, and so therefore, after a couple attempts, yes, we make it past Surge, which with a bird at this level, kind of feel like it's still more on him than me for having those resets and still being able to make it through. Onwards to the next city. However, the next city does lie at the end of Rock Tunnel. And in order to make it through Rock Tunnel, you do have to go up against the self-destructing hiker. Now, he poses 2 separate threats. Well, I guess 3 really when you consider the fact that I did not heal going into this fight. But there is the second and the main premise that I was going to point out, which is that he knows Rock Throw. Rock Throw is super effective against this bird, and it took out a lot of my health, and there are 2 more Pokemon on his team that do know that move. So this is very bad for me. The other thing that is very bad for me is, of course, his namesake, which is Self-Destruct. Self-Destruct does 130 power. That's a lot of damage, and this little bird does not have a lot of defense. However, using Drill Peck and some luck, we have made our way through the first 2 Geodudes, which does mean that we are on to the final part of this challenge, and the Graveler does not use either of the 2 very effective moves. He does use Tackle, and then again, another misuse using Defense Curl. The fact that it was left with just a sliver of health, it could have done really anything else in order to defeat me, but it does not, and I get the win, meaning that I get to now continue on my training path and fighting every single trainer within the Rock Tunnel, and then we're going to make our way into Lavender Town, and then across the way, past Saffron City, to go all the way over to Celadon City. And the reason for that is because we are going to go immediately over to Erica's gym. One of the fun things for me in this level, or this section of the game perhaps, is that usually I do a cheeky little edit to showcase that I fight every trainer in the gym just because, again, good experience. But in all honesty, this actually, even over top of Charmander, this is the fastest that I make my way through this gym so far on this entire challenge. I'm looking forward to seeing if something else can potentially do it even any faster. And of course, maybe getting a slightly better pathing and making sure that I get through my menus a little bit quicker when it comes time to use my cut attack. Therefore, I could potentially get through all this just a little bit faster. But honestly, Spearow with Drill Peck, it's a thing of beauty. I grabbed the PP up from just outside of this building, right around the corner from the game corner. It's hidden in this little back corner, this little back alleyway. I use it on Drill Peck, which puts my move all the way up to 24 usages of Drill Peck. We'll get another one in a little bit to make it 28. But for now, we have 24 usages, and I have already at this point made it through all but 2 trainers outside of Erica. And Drill Peck just one-shot KOs every single one of them. There is nothing that they can do to stand up against this little bird. Perhaps a Gen 1 miss would help, but at the end of the day, I am faster than all of them, and I am stronger than all of them. Being super effective means that at this point, we're going to go up against Erica, and guess what? She's also going to be one-shot. So, as Spearow Drill Pecks his way through the entirety of Erica's gym, from the moment that I walk through the door to the moment that I walk out of the door in just a few seconds' time, we defeat this entire gym in just under 2 minutes flat. Honestly, maybe the best thing that Spearow's going to do all day. After a little bit of time at the Celadon Mall there to get a few extra vitamins and things like that just to sort of boost the power of Spearow, we then Drill Peck our way through the entirety of the secret hidden base. We then get one last little vitamin to use before we go over to face Giovanni's first team. This power tool of a bird gets to use Drill Peck a lot against this team because it does resist us, despite it being quite a few levels below us. Spearow obviously needed those levels because it's taking a good amount of damage still since they are resisting us. But at the end of the day, this first team does not have enough power in it in order to overtake Spearow. With only 3 Pokemon, we are able to Drill Peck our way through, as always, probably a phrase you're going to hear a lot, as we then escape that HQ and make our way back to Lavender Town to take on Rival 4. Drillpeck is, of course, doing its thing, and as you can see, 5 shots, 5 kills. We are now moving on to the rest of the Pokemon Tower. One of the benefits that Spearow has here is that flying type moves are not necessarily super effective against ghost types, but because we're normal flying, these ghosts can't hit us, so we also outspeed them, so there of course is that as well. But we fight through every single one of these ghost trainers, these channelers, and we make our way to the Marowak Spirit. 2 Drillpecks takes care of that. We then go upstairs, and of course it's time for yet another Team Rocket encounter. Team Rocket, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to say the same sentence every single video, but at the same time, I guess it's always someone's first video watching, right? So for now, Team Rocket, not a challenge. At some point, we're going to have some Pokemon that will struggle against them, but for today, that will not be Spearow. We get the Poké-Flute, and now we can go fight Snorlax. Nice. Now that that's done, we make our way through the cycling path all the way down to Fuchsia City, and we are in Koga's gym now, making our way through every trainer here. I've left a few trainers back on the cycling road just in case I need some extra experience later, but I try to cut down some of the time just by taking only one of the paths down and fighting a few people. I'm now going to heal a couple times here and there between some of these fights just to make sure that Spearow is fighting fit. But at this point, we are level 50, which is the same level as Koga's ace at this point. So we're looking pretty good. And honestly, even though most of the people in his gym are not really at all his type of Pokemon, like Arbok is really going to be the only one. This is a poison gym, and yet there are Sandslash and Hypno and Drowsy. I guess they learn poison gas, but that does not make them poison Pokemon. It's a very weird caveat. It's a very weird gym to begin with. I don't really understand the thinking behind it, but, you know, I'm not going to complain about it because at the end of the day, Spearow is able to handle them pretty easily. Drillpeck, as always, coming in very clutch. And honestly, the worst that they can really do in any of these fights is exactly what happens here, which is I use Drillpeck, it survives, it poisons me, but I still have so much health. So all I have to do is head back out of the gym, go get a quick heal, and then come back. Now, I did record this very late at night because of the way that the week rolled out. Like I mentioned last week, it was my birthday weekend. So by the time I got back and filmed all these things, it was about 2 in the morning when I got to that section right there, walking into an invisible wall to get to Koga. But eventually I find him, and as you can see, there's not much to commentate on because 1, 2, 3, and 4 Drillpecks and all 4 of his Pokemon down. And speaking of Pokemon going down, remember earlier I talked about how fast Spearow got through all of Erica's gym? Well, we're going to basically witness the exact same thing, only this time even faster. I only didn't count this in the conversation earlier because this isn't a real gym, this is just the fighting dojo. And there's no, kind of maze and there's no plants to cut down. It is just a straight line. You get to the end, you get to pick up a Pokemon. That's the deal, that's what you get. But it is pretty cool to watch Spearow just absolutely steamroll, a few different monkeys and some bodybuilders. Like, it's pretty sick. Oh, of course, then Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee. Spoiler alert, that is exactly what you're going to see in about 5 seconds when I go up against the Karate Master. But this is something that is important too, because again, we have to carry different Pokemon to use the HMs that we are going to be using to maneuver the world. And so I always need someone to use Strength. And yeah, a couple of the other Pokemon on my team could use Strength, but if I'm going to come here and train up, might as well take one of the Pokemon that's known for Strength and have it be my Strength Pokemon. Easy peasy. And speaking of Strength Pokemon, we have now moved on to Silphco, where our very first stop on our tour of fights is going to be fighting the Machoke for the Machoke Candy. It's going to be one of the 11 rare candies that we will pick up in this level. We're not going to do the one at the power plant. I don't think we need that one today. But we are going to pick up this one, and it's going to be one of 11 rare candies that we use at the Elite Four to make sure that we are both leveled up far enough and that we're not having any kind of badge boost resets at the end of those matches, or mid-match, really. Now, I know I've teased that before, so over the little montage here of us fighting some of the villains here at Silphco, let me explain what that term actually means. It's something that I mention in every video, but I don't always remember to explain in each video, and every now and then you get the question of, what does that mean? Of course. Just in case you're new here, let me tell you what a badge boost glitch is. You see, you can already see the little icon over 3 of the spaces here on the left-hand side of the screen on attack, defense, and speed. So when I got some of the badges that are out there, every other badge gives you a boost to one of your stats. So for Brock, you get the attack. Then when you go up against Surge, you get defense, etc., etc. Each time that happens, right, you get a little percentage boost to your attack stat, and it goes up permanently. From then on, though, the big thing is that anytime you use any form of move that changes one of those stats, and that also goes for your opponent using something to lower one of those stats, it automatically re-rolls and reapplies that boost to the current number that it sees. Now, again, it's not just to the thing that's just been affected, it happens to all of them. So whenever I use agility in battle, if I go +6 on my speed, then I can use it 3 times to do that because it always sharply increases. That's +2 each time. And each time I do that, that's going to be 3 times that these boosts are happening to the other 3 stats of special, attack, and defense, and they will get boosted as well. And that's going to help us with hitting harder, but also taking damage way better. It's effectively the only way that a Pokemon like Spearow can possibly withstand attacks that are either electric, rock, or ice. And all of those types of moves are things that we're going to see plenty of between our rival, the Elite Four, and of course Giovanni, who we're going to see here at Silphco and at the 8th gym. Spoiler alert if you've never played this game before, but yeah, the Team Rocket guy, he's the 8th gym leader. Going into this battle, Rival Fival, as many say, specifically J. Rose, I know he kind of coined that term there, and we are going into this pretty high leveled. I think that's a thing that we've seen quite a few times across the board. If memory serves, I don't think we've ever been this high of a level before getting to this point, at least not without using rare candies, and we have not used any at this point. Unfortunately, maybe we should have, I don't know. The fact that we did die out there pretty quickly, unfortunately. Okay, I think that with a reset, this is another one of the situations where we can get a better RNG, we can get a better run for sure in here. I think a lot of it comes down to how hard Sandslash hits us in the beginning, and I'm not doing any setup right now. I feel like because of my level, I don't need to. If I had done any, maybe against Ninetales, perhaps Cloyster and Jolteon don't hit quite as hard. The fact that I even survived any kind of move from Cloyster to begin with is a testament to the level difference between us at this point. So we do another reset. We're going to come back. I think that really this is the moment that it sets in that some form of setup needs to happen. I only do 1. I probably could have afforded at least 2. But the other big problem is I got a level up and that reset my stats. So it didn't really matter, I guess, in the long run. It did help against the Cloyster. That was, I think, the major speed bump that I had to get over. And once we got over that, we are now able to move forward and fight Jesse and James. They show up with the same tried and true method of sending out Weezing, Arbok, and Meowth. And once again, it's the tried and true fashion. They fall at the hands of my little Spearow. We then unlock this door and it's time to fight Giovanni for the second time. This time, we've got 4 Pokemon. The big difference here between the last run and this one is the fact that there are no rock moves. So even though there is a little bit more defense on his side and a little bit more fighting that we have to kind of break through. Really, this one is actually the easiest fight of the 3 when it comes to Giovanni, at least maybe for certain Pokemon. I think obviously other Pokemon like, the Weedle, for example, would struggle more here just because there are more Mons. But in this case, because there's no rock moves, Spearow just sort of cruises right through. And now we get to move on to Sabrina's gym. At her gym, we fight every single one of the trainers, then we go up against Sabrina herself. Abra can be a little daunting only because it can debuff your accuracy, but at level 58, you can just drill peck both Abra and Kadabra, get 2 Alakazam, get it down to 1 health. The recover doesn't do enough, so you just take it out anyway. Bing bang boom, they are all done, and so we can dig our way out and head over to Blaine's gym. Now, I never show Cinnabar Island because the coloration for this island is really hard on the eyes at 4 times speed, so I'm always just going to skip directly to the fight against Blaine. As you can see here, I do the setup, but of course, hitting me for so much damage with Flamethrower and then being confused, yeah, that just means I take myself out. Okay, you got me on that one, Blaine. You got a lot better between red, blue, and then yellow. So it means that we should put a little bit of respect on your name. I am still going to try to set up. I only set up twice. 3 times probably would have made all of my hits go, no problem. But it doesn't matter because in the end, he does make one small blunder and he uses Reflect instead of any kind of attack, and therefore Spearow wins the day. I always cut this next section just for the sake of time, but I do fight every single trainer in this gym just to make sure that I am ready to go up against Giovanni. With a bird Pokemon, especially a pre-evolution, yeah, he's really tough. He's actually quite hard to defeat. And if you look to the left-hand side, if you've watched the Pidgey video, you will notice that there is a major difference in the types of moves that I have brought to this fight. And the big reason for that, not strategy, it is called, I made a mistake. I forgot to pick up a very crucial piece of the fight. I decided very early on, well, I'll just try, I'll just see where it goes. But no, it doesn't go well enough. So I do need to make a quick trip back to Saffron City and pick up a little move called Mimic. This is a move that I've described in a couple other videos and about how I don't want to use Mimic on every single Pokemon that can use it just because they can use it, because it means that you're not really seeing a lot of different strategies. Maybe you're seeing a lot of different strategies to get them to that final point, and then Mimic is just sort of a final tool. Yeah, okay, maybe. But the way I see it, I really only want to use it if I feel like it's absolutely necessary. And with Spearow, I think it's, unfortunately, absolutely necessary. So in this fight, we are going to Mimic Earthquake from Dugtrio because currently none of its attacks can hit us. So once we have that, we can set up a couple times. I'm a little nervous about setting up too many times just because Sand Attack can hit. It's the only thing that he can do to me. So with +4 speed and 2 boosts overall, we are now hitting for a lot more damage, which means that we get to the Rhydon. He almost takes us out. If that was a critical hit, I don't think we walk away, but we get the victory. Only 2 tries for Giovanni with a bird Pokemon? I mean, yeah, again, we've got Mimic, but that feels unheard of. Very good to see. And then after a quick healing transition that feels straight out of Severance and Lumen Industries, we immediately go back into the battlefield and we are going to go up against our rival once we learn how ledges work. This battle is going to be much more difficult, but we're still not at the champion level. Sandslash not having Earthquake is kind of a big deal. Granted, with a flying type, it doesn't matter. But once he gets to the Earthquake level, it means that he's just kind of a powerhouse. It means that everything he's got already hits very hard. And you can kind of see that here, right? Now, the Execute has not evolved yet or anything like that, so he's pretty quick to take down, but we didn't really do much of a setup, which means that we barely survived that Cloyster, which has me very nervous for the Jolteon. But wouldn't you know it, Mimic and Slash do it again, and we beat our rival for the final time until he is the champion. So let's go heal up and let's take on Indigo Plateau. we make a quick trip to the PC. We drop off all of our Pokemon that are not Spearow. We do a little healing. We buy a few items. And then we are going to use 8 of the 11 rare candies and go all the way up to level 76. I'm going to keep a few of those rare candies in my back pocket just to make sure that I'm not leveling up mid-fight against someone like Agatha, against Lance, or against the champion. I don't think that we're going to have that issue with the first two, since especially we just finished leveling up before we get to Lorelei. And the thing is that, again, just it doesn't matter what you plan for. It doesn't matter how well you know Lorelei. RNG with things like critical hits and all those other things, she will frequently just sort of change it up just enough or hit you in a way that you're not expecting. And so you kind of can't plan for her, in my opinion. I think as much as you can plan for her, she's going to try and shake you loose a little bit. And it's very frustrating, especially for the bird Pokemon. They really struggle very hard against her. Even being this much higher of a level than her, really, Spearow is struggling even against the first Pokemon, the Dugong. And I do get to set up quite a bit, but of course, the biggest issue is that if she doesn't use a Super Potion there, which she does, thank goodness for me, but if she doesn't, I don't know what to tell you. I think Spearow does not walk out of this fight. I think that sometimes the best way to get the victory against her is just to watch her fully fumble the entire situation. I mean, using super potions, especially, like I can't believe they didn't give her hyper potions. Using super potions where it does not do nearly enough to save her from my wrath. And honestly, I think that all of the moves that I've made up until this point are exactly what we needed. Obviously, we needed the levels, we needed that HP, we needed that defense. I feel very good about that. The fact that we made it through after only 2 attempts is seemingly crazy against Lorelei. I've had a lot of mumbling rants saying, "Are you kidding me?" about a lot of things that she's done at the best. So we make it through very quickly today and move on to, you know, the hiker. The guy that has a name, I guess, maybe if I was nice enough to ask for it. But today he does pose a little bit of an issue. I mean, you know, it's a bird Pokemon. He's got 2 Pokemon that have Rock Slide, as you just saw him miss, thankfully. But it does mean that we can make it all the way through to Machamp, and Drill Peck will drop him easily. And of course, we leveled up in the middle of that fight, which means that we will not have to worry about leveling up in the middle of this fight after doing any kind of boosts. So that'll be good for having an extra rare candy later. Now, if you thought some of the other fights were quick in the past, let me direct your attention to what's happening on the screen right now. Golbat was the only Pokemon that stood even a slight chance. Drill Peck is not super effective against these guys. We talked about this back at Pokemon Tower. But, my god, Spearow. Goodness gracious. Can't believe how easily you dispatched of those ghosts, those poison Pokemon. Incredible job. And honestly, I would love to see that continue on after we use 1 rare candy just to make sure that we are at the start of a level. And then we go up against Lance. Lance is pretty powerful. I mean, this Gyarados is a real menace no matter what Pokemon you're going up against him with. I do all of my setup, but my defense is pretty low, which makes me a little nervous. I'm going to try and grab Ice Beam here against the Dragonair. Yeah, it freezes me solid. And you see, the big problem here is that in Gen 1, you can't just thaw out. Unfortunately, it's a thing where you have to be hit by a fire move, or else you're done. You are now a frozen chicken nugget for the rest of time. So we have to do a reset, and we have to come back to this fight against Gyarados. This is a very difficult fight, in my opinion. Gyarados could really take out just about anyone, and he is getting in his little chippies against Spearow. Spearow is not starting this fight with a lot of defense, and it has been dropped pretty heavily. It's down to 82. That's extremely weak. However, if we can pick up Ice Beam, you know the rest, folks. We can 1, 2, and 3. Listen, I don't care who you are. That's just good fun right there. I know the mimic thing, the mimic gimmick as I call it, can be a little tiresome, but man, I do love watching those final 3 Pokemon go down that quickly and that easily. It is kind of a thing of beauty. And with Lance out of the way, that means that we can use the final 2 rare candies and take our Spearow up to level 80. Level 80. Wow. And that means that we can now take on our rival at the champion level. We've done this move before with Pidgey, actually. Unfortunately, Psybeam... Okay, man. Like, I can't stand that move. I feel like the crit just feels way too insane. I don't know how to explain it, but it is what it is. Either way, we reset really quickly and we come right back. Luckily, Spearow only gets hit with a Fury attack, so we have way more health coming into this one. We are going to pick up Recover. I think Recover is a great move to have for this fight in particular, just because Spearow does not have a lot of defense, and his HP is actually pretty low, I would argue, for someone that's at level 80. Now, this is a problem. Exeggutor getting the Hypnosis off is a real bummer because it means that I can't do any setups while I'm asleep. And of course, in this generation, when you wake up, you don't get to make a move the same turn, which means that every time I am basically just spamming Recover because I know that by the time I wake up, he's going to have whittled down my health. The biggest challenge here is, can we potentially get a heal in and any form of setup before he next uses Hypnosis, whether successfully or not? We just need to be able to keep this thing moving. And can we do this before we run out of Recover moves? Because if we wake up and we're down to low health and we have no Recovers left, while we still have a Cloyster to go up against, that's not a good feeling. We have still, at this point, not even gotten in a single agility until this exact moment. It took so many moves. We just sat there and got barrage after barrage after barrage before we finally were able to do anything. Now, he has not used Leech Seed. I actually think that if he was able to get a Leech Seed off in this situation, this would be an even harder fight because he would have been chipping away at my health even more throughout the entire time. But obviously, he does not go for it. We finally get in our final agility. It has been about a minute at this point since we first started fighting the Exeggutor. I think that this is maybe the longest we have ever fought the champion in the entire series so far. I am very curious to see if this is the longest it will go. Finally, we are healed up, we are built up, and we get a one-hit KO. We then go up against Cloyster. Thank goodness he does not get an instant freeze. If that had been a freeze, I can't describe the feeling I would have had. Now, Ninetales, of course, does do quite a bit of damage here with Fire Spin because we cannot break out of it. We are now out of Recovers, so it's kind of now or never. We get the fight to Jolteon. He's going to go for Thunder Wave, but even with cutting our speed in half, we are still faster because of agility, and we beat the champion. Wow, I gotta say, after seeing what happened to Pidgey, I really kind of felt like, okay, we have to make sure that this next bird gets built up in a big way. I was still having my doubts, though. Going up against Giovanni, I just felt that maybe we got lucky. I didn't think that we had really necessarily made the best plays, more than he had just made worse plays, if that makes any sense. But considering how bad his stats are, and considering how much of an uphill battle it was, really from the start all the way to the finish, the middle obviously got a little bit better, but the start and finish really were very rough for a Pokemon like Spearow. So getting in at 2 hours and 7 minutes with only 11 resets, honestly, I will take that any day of the week. So good job to you, Spearow. Now, if you've made this far in the video without giving a like, a subscribe, or maybe sharing this video with a friend that you think might enjoy this video, honest to God, it would be pretty spectacular if you did that right now. The big thing for me is that, A, I'm coming off my birthday weekend as I'm recording this. This is Sunday night after my birthday was celebrated on Friday and Saturday with friends and family. And I'm feeling very tired. I'm feeling very worn down. But it would be a great last-minute birthday present for me if you did that. But also, even outside of that, let me just say, as someone who's been in the content creation space for 9 years at this point, every single time you do any form of interaction for a smaller creator, whether it's to share, whether it's honestly just dropping a comment, even the people that just say first, those comments help with the algorithm. It helps get your stuff out in front of all these other people. And this is the sort of thing that I really want to do my entire life. I love creating content. I love doing these things. And I've really been hankering to do so much more with Pokemon over the years. And that's why I started this whole project. You get the idea. You get the spiel. You've probably heard it from so many other creators. But as always, I would be remiss if I didn't do the same thing. So drop that subscribe, give us a like, share it around, and I will see you all next Monday for another solo Pokemon challenge in Pokemon Yellow.